coming up to 6:45. Welcome back to Breakfast. The United Nations has warned of imminent catastrophe if attacks between Israel and Lebanon continue. More than 550 people, including 50 children, have been killed following Israel's continued bombing of Lebanon. In return, Lebanon is launching hundreds of rockets across the border at Israel, and global leaders have urged for calm, citing fears that Lebanon could become another Gaza. International Relations Professor Robert Patman from Otago University is with us to discuss this morning. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Daniel.
Firstly, what do you make of this escalation in terms of Israeli airstrikes over the last few days?
Well, it's very worrying. Since the Hamas attack on Israel on the 7th of October last year, there has been low-level skirmishing between Hezbollah, which is aligned to Iran, and Israel. Hezbollah have been if you like, skirmishing with Israel to protest at the lack of ceasefire. And although Gaza hasn't been resolved from the Israeli point of view, Israel has turned its attentions to the northern border with Lebanon. The idea here from Mr. Netanyahu is that by hitting Hezbollah and forcing them back, they can bring back the 60,000 Israelis which had to be evacuated with the border from Lebanon. So that's the purpose of these strikes, so to create an environment whereby Israelis can return to their homes in the border area of Lebanon.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, as we heard in the news this morning, has been quoted saying he doesn't want Lebanon becoming another Gaza. Do you think that is a possibility?
Well, it is a possibility when you have a UN Security Council which is impotent and a bystander. One of the things we've seen, Daniel, in the 21st century is the UN Security Council, which has formal responsibility for maintaining global peace and security, has been unable to do so in a whole series of situations, Ukraine and now Gaza. And we still haven't got a ceasefire in Gaza after 11 months, in which more than 40,000 Palestinians, about 70% of whom were basically people not connected with Hamas, more than 40,000 have been killed. So this does, I think, I think the Secretary General is quite right to say that without reforming the UN Security Council, we must be concerned that that Lebanon may become another Gaza.
Robert, how do you see Iran reacting over what's happening in Lebanon?
Well, I think while Hezbollah is still in the game against Israel, Iran will probably stay out of it. Iran and the United States are both desperate to avoid involvement in a wider regional war. But we have to understand that Hezbollah is very much a proxy of Iran. So if Israel degrades Hezbollah to a point where Hezbollah does not like it's viable, which doesn't seem possible at the moment because it's a very strong organization, then I think you could expect Iran to step up their activities. And of course, that triggers the possibility, if Iran moves in such a big country, then the United States will come under enormous pressure to react.
Yeah, interesting you touch on the US, Robert, because is Israel now straining relations with the Biden administration?
On the face of it, yes. The Biden administration has repeatedly expressed concerns about the high level of civilian casualties in Gaza. It has also warned Israel it doesn't want a wider regional war. Remember, in Washington, the Biden administration, Kamala Harris, the vice president, is facing an election in November. This is just what the administration doesn't want. But they have tremendous leverage, Daniel, if they choose to use it, which is they are the major provider of arms for Israel. If they cut those arms off, then Israel will have to decease and stop these operations. That hasn't got to that point yet. But I do think the Americans are getting increasingly frustrated with Netanyahu. There's a suspicion in Israel and in the United States that Mr. Netanyahu's motivation is not for more security, but to prolong his period in office and therefore ensure his political survival. In other words, for Mr. Netanyahu, continuing the war may be a way of avoiding some of the criminal charges that he faces should he have to leave office after the war.
Robert, I know I'm asking you to look at your crystal ball here, but how long do you think this is going to play out for?
It's very difficult to say. I think it's handy that all world leaders are meeting in the General Assembly this week in UN in New York, including our own Foreign Minister, Mr. Peters. I think that's very good timing. I think there's going to be a real sense of urgency. So hopefully, finally, there can be some concerted international action to halt the Lebanese crisis and also perhaps move towards that long-awaited ceasefire in Gaza.
So good to have your analysis and insight. Professor Robert Patman, as always, thank you.
Thank you very much.